Good evening. We're live again. We're going to continue talking about Haggadat Hapesah. For those who want, then we're going to post this on Facebook. Um, just some housekeeping. We still have a way for those who want to order Haggadat Hapesah. They can contact me, and I'll try to send them a copy. Just send me your address. There are some people who we've had to come up with some clever ways to send it because it's very hard to get to a post office here. Postal service here what wasn't the best before this whole corona thing, and now it hasn't gotten any better, let's just say. But try me and we'll try to get it. And I think it's supposed to be in bookstores, but I don't know if the bookstores are open. I got to Jerusalem the other day, but I did not have excuse me, I didn't have a chance to see if bookstores were open. I saw that there was a lot that was not open. So I hope, God willing, we'll still have a way to do the Korban Pesach this year. It's so funny. This has been so regressive. I was telling a colleague that I spoke to Rav Schechter back in the first Shabbos of February when we were in America, and he said he had his copy. It was on his desk, and as we discussed last Thursday, now all these questions we're getting: how do you make seder when you're alone? How do you deal with all these crazy emergency questions? We were actually regressing this year. This is certainly not something I had hoped for, and I hope that we'll be able to get out of this because we have to think ahead. We have to think forwardly, not just think ahead and plan ahead. We have to look forward to when not only we get back to the way things were, we recover, but we get to a point where things are even better than they used to be. Recently, the Haggadah was reviewed by Rabbi Daniel Gladstein. I thank him very much for that. I also thank him very much for his most recent sefer also, which, God willing, we'll have a chance to talk about next Purim. I did not have a chance to talk about it this previous Purim because I was sort of jet lagged for like a week, and I'm only glad that all the terrible upheavals that we've seen happened after Purim. At least had a chance to have a normal Purim. But after that, it just that's when everything just went on its face, as they say here in Israel. There is a section that we did add from the Sifrei. We continue the drasha, as many know, the body of the Haggadah, which is the part called Magid. We read a section from Deuteronomy. Arami Oved Avi. My father was chased out by an Aramean, where he was made an Aramean refugee, depending on who you ask. We follow the Targum, which doesn't seem to fit the Trup so much, by the way, and the sage's opinion that it means that the Arami is Lavan, Laban, who was Yaakov Avinu's uncle, and he tried to kill Yaakov Avinu, and Yaakov Avinu eventually got down to Egypt. That pasuk is very difficult to understand because what does Lavan have to do with Yaakov eventually going down to Egypt? Lavan tried to destroy everybody. Let's say when Joseph was 7. And Joseph was sold at the age of 17, and Yaakov Avinu came down to Egypt 22 years later. So it doesn't really fit. 22 years after Joseph was 17, another 10 years, 32 years later, that's when he made his way to Egypt. What does one have to do with the other? I don't know. I'd like to see some ideas, but it's not the hardest question. We added the last verse there. It says, and he brought us to this place. Rabbi Eliyahu Weber, who is the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Mikdash, and up until recently, the one who was leading the services on the Temple Mount. Yes, that same Eliyahu, Rabbi Weber, who was a very phenomenal individual, man of true commitment and standing up for his principles, and being consistent in his halachic approach. Someone who's done a lot, and even if he has ruffled the Rabbanut's feathers, he at his behest we included this. Rabbi Gladstein has pointed out that perhaps in one understanding, or many understandings, this is not relevant here, but I think it is, because after all, the Sifrei is talking about being in the Beis HaMikdash, and it seems to be the midrash itself is whole. We've been leaving out the rest of this midrash apparently because we've been in exile. We have not been performing the Seder in the temple, and that's why apparently this was left out. I would gather that they actually used to say this, and that's what we're trying to get back to. We're going back to the olden days, so that's why we've re-included this. One of the things also I want to ask, I realized that perhaps he did have a question, but he didn't want to ask it when he was doing the video then, and that is the Chasal Seder Pesach, when we say that we've completed the describing the order of the Pesach, there is a verb meaning. The Korov Nahel Nite Kana, Biduyim Letzion Berina. The Korov Nahel, soon guide. Nahel is to guide or to direct. Nite Kana, the planting. That's a reference to the Jewish people. Peduyim Litzion Rina, redeemed they were the redeemed ones to Zion in joyfulness. Rina, Rina is usually a joyfulness that involves people cheering. Okay, it has to, from the word rinana, it actually has to have some sort of noise to it. And in the updated version, the Korov, what I write here, I'll read you the exact updated version. Remember, it's my choice. I wrote the Haggadah, so I get to choose what's actually there. Hold on 1 second. I can't find it here. Yes. Well, okay. I'm not using the hard copy. I'm using the PDF copy. Okay. Puduyim in this case is not a participle. It's actually just a verb. What do I mean? The definition of participle is you take what is a verb form of a word and you use it as an adjective or as a noun. And a lot of the Hebrew verbs can do that. The best example is the basic present tense verbs. Shomer is guarding. A person, it's the present tense masculine singular for both first person, third person, and second person. But a shomer is also a guardian. We've taken the word shomer, which is a verb, and made it into a noun in this case. So, b'shirei halel nitei chana, through the songs of the Hallel, songs of praise, nitei chana, that's a reference to us, but now we're missing the verb. I've taken out the predicate from this sentence, peduyim b'tzion rina. Peduyim is the participle. Now it has become the verb. Before it was an adjective. B'korov nahel nitei chana peduyim b'tzion rina. Bring them back, redeemed to Zion, and now it's just functioning as a pure verb. Okay, Peduyim is functioning here as the pure verb, the predicate of this sentence. So that explains the apparent the difficulty that you get when you first see it. Next, the updated text of the bracha after Magid has here. And we do thank you instead of no delicha, and we shall thank you. Okay, it's also a present tense. See, we've changed that participle also. We thank you. There is the we is anachnu, modim is we thank. We're thanking. We're the ones doing the thanking. We could say no. That's how we updated it. Rochza remains the same, as pointed out by others. I have included all 4 brachas, all 4 blessings on the 4 cups of wine. There's opinions that say you're only supposed to say on the first cup and on the 3rd cup. Yes, but I was following not only this is the Ashkenazic opinion, saying that you make the blessings recited in all 4 cups. It's also Maimonides' opinion. And in this case, when there's overlap, so we go with Maimonides. I mean, we go with Maimonides when they agree with the Ashkenazic version. I realize now that perhaps I should have done a Sephardic version also, but we don't have time. We're still having trouble putting out the English one just because we're there, stuck at home working with the kids. It's very difficult. So we appreciate your help. Motzi matzah. What is the point here? Maror and korech. There is no korech, even though korech is an option. Why? Very simple. The original sources that we have. The Tosefta is the first, and the Gemara is quoted, says that Hillel himself, Hillel the elder, was the one who would eat Pesach matzah and maror, shloshtan. It says Pesach matzah and maror, it says shloshtan. It's unambiguous. The 3 items that need to be eaten, according to the Torah, he would eat them all together. And then the Gemara continues and says that his colleagues disagree with him, and there's a reason for that, because uh, you eating two foods is okay. You can still taste both of them, but when you eat three together, two gang up and cancel out the taste of one. Okay, there's one thing you're not going to be tasting in there. There's too much taste going on there, so you have to taste the food. So the sages did not allow making a Hillel sandwich. That's what Hillel did. In the times of Galus, and we don't have the Korban Pesach, we want to make a memorial to the temple. So we do we do a little bit of Hilded. We first eat we eat the matzah and the maror, at least that we have together. But even that is not an actual mitzvah. You first eat matzah and then you eat maror. Matzah is a biblical obligation. Maror is only a rabbinic obligation when there is no Korban Pesach. And then you eat a sandwich. Once again, there's no problem with that. You already fulfilled both your mitzvahs after the fact. But once you have Korban Pesach back on the table, you cannot do like Hillel. You can only eat matzah and maror together, perhaps, but you cannot eat Pesach, matzah, and maror. So you have an option. There are those who might disagree with the Rambam, so that's what we had there. Then Pesach, it's been pointed out by Gavriel that ala sova does not necessarily mean if you just get yourself all satiated and then finish with eating the Korban Pesach just a little bit, although that is how Maimonides has it. He has pointed out, and this seems to be the case also from the Gemara in Shavuos, that al hasova is like what the priests do in the temple. That is, when they eat the sacrificial meat, they have to do it in a respectful manner or in a delightful manner, which is that they don't just eat it as it is, or they don't just eat some and that's it. They have to eat it to satiety with other foods. They eat it as part of a larger meal that satiates. We're not talking about achila gasa, overeating. We're just talking about the right way to do it. So a Korban Pesach, there's not actually an order how you eat the rest of the meal. You could take out whatever, your potato kugel and your tzimis and your roasted zucchinis, which we're going to have, and eat the Korban Pesach along with that. It doesn't have to be the last thing you ate, as long as the meal of the Korban Pesach is lasting. There are those who dispute this, by the way. They say, no, the last thing you have to eat is the Korban Pesach, so that you have the taste. If you've been eating, let's say, a meal of, like I said, tzimis and potato kugel, that's great. And now you have one more bite to eat. Make that the Korban Pesach. There's a reason. That way you have the taste of the Korban Pesach with you the rest of the night. But in the temple, it wasn't like that. When they ate al hasova, it just meant that they had to eat a nice, respectful meal and be satiated with that. That is the rule of eating Korban Pesach. There was something else that needed to be said about this. Yes, it seems very clearly from the Tosafists and Maimonides concerning this Gemara that the meal that a person has is what is on the Seder plate. That is, the Seder plate is every person's meal, his prefab meal. He's supposed to eat a certain amount of bread with his meal, and bitter herbs, and karpas, and charoses, and the meat of the Korban Pesach, and the meat of the Chagigah. That is his meal, and he can make a meal out of that if it's enough. I was always surprised. Those people eat so much matzah and so much lettuce for their motzi matzah, their moror, and their korech. How do they have room for anything else afterwards? I mean, I myself as a young man would be able to eat a lot more than that, but I can imagine if those who especially believe that they have to eat large quantities of matzah and moror, how do they even have a meal afterwards? Be that as it may, if a person has enough Korban Pesach meat and enough matzah and enough lettuce and enough celery, and he has a good charoses, gazunta charoses that actually tastes good, you can put in your sandwich, that should be enough. And that's the way Maimonides seems to have it, that his meal consists of that. And that's what should be on the plate. But of course, he says he could eat other stuff. You could bring another plate. It doesn't have to be that everything on the Seder plate is eaten. Whether or not to eat the egg, we don't have the egg. The egg is a zecher for the Chagigah. And we're not going to have that on the Seder plate, God willing. And if you want to eat eggs at your Seder, go right ahead. And this is the good thing, that custom not to eat roasted meat. Of course, we don't have that custom. You're actually specifically supposed to eat roasted meat. The Korban Pesach can only be roasted. Barech, yes, we've adjusted it. We've said now we pray to God that He establish and keep us and upkeep us the way it is, and keep the temple, keep Jerusalem. And we don't pray for the coming of the Messiah because He's already here. He should be here. I did mention that there's a custom to pour a cup of wine for Eliyahu Navi. It's been pointed out, suggested by the Vilna Gaon, that this is for that fifth cup. The fifth cup of wine is a old Talmudic custom. It's mentioned by Rishonim. Some wonder what happened to it, why it disappeared. Someone today put out something on the Smart blog suggesting a textual reason and misprints, etc., and how it sort of fell out of the book, sort of fell out of our Haggadah. I've put it back in there at the insistence of Rabbi Rosen, blessed memory. I think he only passed away only 2 years ago. The head of Machon Somet, he liked Rav Kasher's suggestion and felt that Maimonides' suggestion to have this fifth cup is a good thing to do. So we have the Kos Shel Yahu and the fifth cup. We don't pray now for the destruction of those non-Jewish people. We pray that they join us in the worship of the one true God. That is the Messianic ideal. And we hope for that. And that basically explains the text of the Haggadah up until Hallel. Hallel is the same. Hallel is taken straight out of the Tehillim. I broke up the Hallel into phrases based on the Trop. And I believe that my breakup is actually it is different than that which you'll find in the New Tanakh Simanim. I don't believe that was done so well. It's not the way Rav Breuer for Mosada Rav Kook broke it up. I think you made too many breaks. I disagree with both of them. And I think that those people who are objective and have studied the matter will see that the way I've done it and tried to preserve the parallelism that Rav Breuer was such a big fan of. I have maintained that, and the psukim that have an Olev Yored also have been marked, especially El Hashem Vayar Lanu. So that you can see is differently. That section is set off from the rest of the verse, which maintains in the second half at least a parallelism. And Hashem Zicharanu Yivarech also has that. Or Ki Chilatzta Nafshi Mimaweth. All these are expressions that are marked off by an Olev Yored, which means that they themselves are part of a much longer verse and actually set off from the rest of the verse. So you could go see this. I think it would make it much easier to actually sing the Hallel. It's done in a way that encourages people. They see my previous YouTube video about, for example, how to sing label as Ma'ashiv. At the time, I didn't know he was the artist. You could see that there, and I think it makes it easier. And there we have a different couple of nuschaot, how to say Birkat Hashir. That's a very important thing. I was always intrigued years ago about the argument of what is Birkat Hashir. I couldn't believe there was such a big argument about that. It seems pretty obvious to the sages of the Mishnah what it should be. I'm also reminded of those fascinating ideas they read about how it was St. Peter himself, who was actually an undercover Tana, who wrote this upon completing his mission of trying to separate the young Christian church from the body of Judaism so that it wouldn't cause us any more problems. I cannot believe myself that creating the church was something good for Am Yisrael in the long run. The church was the biggest anti-Semitic force in Christian Europe for about 2,000 years, and planted the seeds of hatred. And like Rambam says, is there anything less messianic than belief in Jesus of Nazareth? This one was supposed to be the Redeemer, but instead he caused us to be chased around the world and massacred. It cannot be. There was basically, if there's anything good in Christianity, it's stolen from Judaism, and all the things that are unique to Christianity are just not good, especially for us. And thank God, Christianity's power in the Western world is very small. Thank God that we are saved from all that Christian love. Thank God we live in the land of Israel and the state of Israel, where we're free of our former Christian overlords. And God willing, this Passover, we should continue celebrating other redemptions, just like we're redeemed from Egypt and redeemed from Europe. We should be redeemed from this plague. We should be redeemed from the hardness of our heart. We should be redeemed from the attitude that prevents us from wanting to perform the mitzvahs. We should be redeemed from our fear of trying to perform the mitzvah. We're going to continue with this tomorrow. Don't forget, please send in your questions, comments, suggestions, feedback, share, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.